continue to swim, waiting to drop it. But no fault of mine, I just cast my line, waiting for the time. Oh, high tide when I ride. Oh, high tide is when I ride. Oh, high tide is when I ride. The water it creeps, it's getting so deep, it's over my head. The water it creeps, it's getting so deep, it's over my head. Oh, high tide is when I ride. Oh, high tide.
Hello.
Oh,
Yes,
high
thank you for joining us for the inaugural episode of the Slackline. That was Crooked Spies taking us into our first chat here. They're a band from Calgary. That is High Tide off their debut album Treason. They got 2 more albums. One just came out. That one's called Waiting. Their other one is Shotgun. All available on iTunes. Crooked Spies. Check them out. Thank you for lending your tune, boys. Welcome to the first episode here. I am your host, Matt. We got co-host JWoww across the table from me. And our first guest here, the very fine and lovely Paulina Maqueda. How's it going, Pau?
I'm all right, thank you. Looking forward to talking to you guys about whatever it is that we're going to talk about.
Okay, great.
We also have another host here, Boris.
Yeah, Boris is
How's it going,
co-host.
Boris?
AKA Good Boy.
He's wondering why all of his space is being taken up.
All right.
Poor guy.
Great.
All right. Well, you know what? Joao brought up a topic yesterday about technology, and let's try to start there, just for shits and giggles. How about that?
Great. Yeah, I think we were talking mainly about...
Are you gonna film the whole thing?
No.
Okay. So that's gonna.
It's just the
Then
beginning.
what's the point of all this microphone?
I spent like an hour setting it all up.
Yeah.
Periscope.
Alright. I gotta just stop this shit right now.
Yeah, it's alright.
Yeah, I guess we just went on, but I think we started talking about was about relationship and technology and how we are actually in a point right now that it's been hard to make real contact with people, you know.
I need a new chair. Sorry, go on.
Malfunction
Continue.
However, we have all this technology to make us connect, and we are not connecting. And what's going on, you know? I mean, we have WhatsApp, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have Tinder, we have all these things that were supposed to connect us, and we're not doing it right. What do you have an input about that, Bo?
Well, at the risk of sounding a little redundant with what's already been said online and everywhere else, that we find or that we think is a social connection tool is actually keeping us apart, because it's so easy to just text somebody immediately whatever it is that you want to say to them. You are skipping the step of making small talk and seeing each other face to face, or having a bit of a more spontaneous and personal interaction rather than a text message that you keep thinking over and over in your head, instead of actually just going there and letting that conversation flow, right? So they are keeping us apart in a way, like they do keep us it's like a step forward but 2 steps back, maybe. I don't know how you guys see it. Well, I do find that it's easy to keep in touch with people who are far away in that sense. It is also easier to push away people who are closer physically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I don't know, as far as the romantic sense of it goes, I'd agree that it kind of creates this sort of situation before you even meet, of like intimacy almost. Like, you know this person very well, maybe almost. Like, maybe that you've been talking a lot, but you've never actually seen them face to face. And then when you get face to face with people, like, so much of what you like about somebody is built on
Image.
not image. Well, I mean, that's part of it for sure, but like, you have the image of them more or less, right? I'm thinking like it's built on just like a physical connection, not necessarily sexual, but like just, I don't know, you sit down and you feel like body language from somebody, and you feel, you know, whether or not they're actually interested in you versus, well, I'm just talking to somebody on the phone. You know, like, I think that's why a lot of it gets kind of dropped. Like when you meet somebody on Tinder or whatever, and it just you get kind of ghosted, or you ghost somebody, because, I mean, it's so easy to do. For one thing, you don't have to actually tell them face to face. You can just like stop talking to them.
Silent treatment.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know, it really messes with my head when I'm going to get on a date and you it's already implied that you find each other attractive because you've passed this like binary system of will you or won't you, hot or not kind of thing. And so I don't know, like, it's kind of already on the table.
I don't know, but that's kind of the thing that I most like about Tinder, to be completely honest with you.
It is. It's nice that it...
that I hate it, but that's one of the parts that I was just like, okay, we just cut the... We did cut the bullshit of the beginning, which was like, would you date me or not? You already said you
based
would.
on a photo that could not even be your photo, right?
But it's not on the photo also. Like, on the only thing, you probably talked a little bit. I know it's not deep conversation. It might be. Oh, mine. I don't know.
No, but like the initial reaction is based on the photo. Yes or no is based on the photo.
But not your date afterwards. Probably, well, at least not mine usually.
No, yeah.
It is the photo, but then you talk a little bit, and then you see like, okay, feel like it's a Donald Trump supporter. It's like, yeah, he can be like, or she can be hot or whatever, but you know what I mean?
I'm not sure where to go about this next, but I think I first have to say that I've never actually been on a Tinder date.
Fair enough.
But if I were to start dating and find potential people to date through Tinder, I would probably be very scared, first of all, of probably not running into a nutcase. I would be very wary of who I'm going out with, just making sure that they're not completely crazy, right? Go out in a public place. Definitely not go back to their place on the first date ever. But if I were to do that, based on the photo, well, it's a very cold way of judging somebody, but I guess it's the only one you have at that point. And then striking a conversation, it depends on what I was looking for, but if I were on Tinder, I would probably be looking for somebody to actually date, like not just a one-night thing. So I would definitely try to find that there's something in common, right? Like we went to film school, and there's something in common amongst all of us, and that's why we have conversations. But what if you run into somebody who has nothing to do with your interests, and then you just like they're stuck talking about accounting or whatever?
Well, that's what blind dates kind of are, which is essentially what these are. But I have a couple issues with two of the things you said. One is, well, if I was going to be on that type of service, then it would be to, you know, meet like a long-term person, which is great. Like one of my best friends lives now with a girl that he met on Tinder, and they love each other, and they're a great couple, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that same thing happened to a friend of mine.
It's amazing. But at the same time, they met each other on Tinder under the impression of you're hot, I'm hot. Like, let's go on a date, but like the implication of the whole thing, how it was born. Tinder was born as a service to hook people up.
Okay, so let's say something. Would you go into I'm just playing another.
Yeah, no.
Like, would you go into a club and then I don't know, or a bar, or said, "Wow, that girl really talks something very like her conversation is amazing."
Yes.
Or would you, or like, if you're seeing from far away, or would you like, "Oh man, that girl, that guy,
Yeah.
so cute."
Regardless,
so hot," or whatever. The image will be the first thing to strike you.
Yes.
Anyway. That's my.
Well, not necessarily. In that scenario, yes. But in a scenario of like, well, I'm out with some friends, and they invited a friend of theirs that I didn't know or something like that, and we hit it off just in conversation. That changes things because that's not purely built
I totally agree.
on like physical attraction from across a room. That person is attractive, I'm going to go talk to them. Like, to be honest, I've hardly ever done that in my life. And I think that the separation that we're talking about that technology has given us is making it harder and harder for people to feel comfortable approaching people one-on-one in real life. Like, the last few dates I've been on have been the result of that, of just going up to them physically and being like, hey, what's up? But as a guy, there's an inherent, which was one of my other issues with you, there's kind of, not with you, with what you said.
Oh, okay.
With what you said.
Thought we were gonna start
With what you said.
Right?
With what you said.
Stay to the end, Paulina, please.
There's this,
Okay.
there's kind of like an implied creepiness that we have to prove that we're not versus being assumed that we aren't. You know, like, your whole thing about Tinder being like, well, I'd want to make sure that they weren't like a crazy person first is, of course, like, valid. But at the same time, like, 95% of people have Tinder on their phones. So your fear of, well, this person might be crazy is no more or less a fear on Tinder as it is in real life.
Okay.
Like taking somebody home from the bar that you don't know, which I'm not saying you do that, but people do it.
Yeah.
Taking somebody home from, I've done it. I know many women who do it. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with
I
it.
had a friend that did it.
There's nothing wrong with it. People do it all the time. That's the point. People do it all the time, and you end up going back to some dude's house or some girl's house that you don't know, without really thinking about it. But then when we start to talk about, well, I'm going to go on a date with a Tinder person and I want to meet in a public place and like, all of that stuff is valid until you kind of push it against what you actually really want in a real scenario is somebody coming up to you out of the blue, right? And being an interesting person and chatting you, right?
I have a couple of thoughts about that. First of all, if somebody comes out of the blue and talks to you, if it's entirely random and there's no connection to that person whatsoever, I would probably be very cautious about how I proceed with that. But if it's somebody, you know, you're a friend of a friend at a party, casual, social gathering, there is already, just being in that situation already removes a barrier that is there when you're on Tinder. Whereas when you're on Tinder, you can initially break that first barrier of the first contact, but then there's also the one where you actually feel that person's vibe. And going back a little bit on what we were talking about a while ago, the vibe and that sense that you get of that person while being physically in the same place, I think is something that no technological tool can substitute. Not even like in the closest way that you can talk, which is through like FaceTime or a video call. There's still nothing that will sort of like that'll give you that sense.
There's a big gap.
Yeah, and I it's probably because I've never been on a Tinder date that I'm so cautious about all this, but I would say that if I were to meet somebody and I'm not saying that it can't happen, because obviously it has happened to a lot of people, but if I were to meet somebody because I wanted to find somebody that I could connect with and potentially be with for a while, that would give me the best sense of whether it's going in a good direction or not. I'm not going to go with the end result, of course, but at least I'm going to know if that's the right, if it's a step in the right direction, right? And I think that's where I would say that technology is also kind of like a crutch to social interaction, because we rely so much on technology to communicate now. Maybe we are feeling that because we have that, we don't have to, whereas if we didn't have it, would we be a little more courageous to step out there and talk to that person in a social gathering? So
not even that. And Gerard, just sorry, before you go, I have one last point to make. Like, I think that there's this romanticized idea, you know, we see it in movies all the time, of that situation of like, ooh, these two people like dropped something beside each other on the train, and they pick them up and they see each other and they go for a coffee or whatever and hit it off, and that's their whole, this is the beginning of the romantic comedy. And I, like, a lot of times when I talk to women, they seem to want that. They seem to want, I wish a guy would be more like, would just like come up and ask me out, rather than like trying to be all kind of like, I don't know, like weird about it in a way, or sneaky about it almost, because I mean, personally, I feel like we almost have to be, because we can't do that anymore. Like, if I'm standing beside a woman on the train and I notice she's reading a book that I like, that's a perfectly, in my opinion, perfectly valid excuse to start up a conversation with this person. Like, oh yeah, I love that book, and that's how people used to meet each other, and then we can't do that anymore because now I'm a freak on the train that's talking to this girl.
Okay, that's something, you touched something that I really wanted to. It's something that I tried to.
You guys want milk for your coffees?
I'm alright, thank you.
Okay.
I was trying to figure it out for a long time, and I'm glad I have you here, Paulina, because that's a cool conversation. I always wanted to talk to you about that. That's like the same line there. So, especially here in Canada, back home was a little bit different. It's more, I think back home, like in Brazil, is more straightforward to the point where you just, if you want to hook up for a night, you just do it, and it's not a big deal, and everyone does it, and it's different in here, I thought. Now here, that point where are you being a freak that you just, you know, you're interested in a girl that you see that she's reading the book that you read 2 days ago, and to a point where you're hitting and being inconvenient, and why not, you know? Where's that line?
Where's that line? Well, first of all, you'd have to probably make sure that that she could be receptive to an interaction like that. If she is
check for rings. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Because I definitely do
well,
that.
That as well, right? Though, like if she's wearing a ring and you still want to hit up a conversation, that's fine. I think your body language is what reflects your intentions, and the way in which somebody presents themselves in that first interaction is key to finding out what's going on in that person's head. If I were reading a book on the train and somebody came up to me and asked about it and came up with a conversation for it, I'd be like, I would probably be open to hearing about it, because it means that they're approaching me because of something that is like something that I like being recognized for, and probably not just because of appearances or whatever. If it's just something related to appearances, and I'd be like, oh, okay, this is a little creepy. But if it shows that there's a little more thought put into the conversation other than physical aspect, then I would probably be a little more open to that. And it depends entirely on the body language. If it's somebody who respects your personal space, and if it's somebody who seems friendly and approachable, then yeah, I'd be more open to that. Oh, but if it's somebody who clearly crosses a boundary in my personal space and who is sort of like heavy on how the way they're looking at me, then I would shut out entirely from that conversation. And and I want to end it politely, obviously, because if you end it if not politely, you could never know how that other person reacts. But I would try to end that conversation politely, try to make the best out of it, I guess, and leave as soon as possible.
Would you say that's just need some water
Need a
there,
moment?
Matt?
I'm good.
You're actually better than you were before, I think.
Yeah, I know. I needed that. It'd been a while.
Anyway, would you say that that's one of the difference between how man and woman see relationships, or how they engage with each other? Whereas, like, the man would totally go just for the physical. I'm not saying that the only thing, but he would. Most of the men that I know would just like, okay, she's hot, I would just like go out with her because just, you know. Whereas the woman, they have to know something else. They have to. I don't know. Most of the time, it's just not enough to be hot.
Yeah, no, and it's probably I don't want to say a misconception, but it's probably somewhat of a judgment that has become a little more common amongst women is if somebody is hot and they like when you date a hot guy, for example, they could be hot and smart, but they're pointing at each other now. All right, if you could obviously date somebody who's hot and smart, right? But usually when you approach a guy, or when a guy who's hot approaches you, I think that the first instinct for me and for a lot of other women too could be, this guy's a jerk, right?
Why is that the first instinct?
Because when somebody is good looking and knows that they could have it a little easier because of their looks, the first thought is that they're pretty cocky about it, right? So when somebody's overconfident of their ability to woo you through the first image, I think it's a little intimidating, because it means that just because he approached you, you will already like them. Yeah, so it's it has to be a little more about that. Plus, nobody wants to date a hot guy who's an idiot.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to date an idiot. It doesn't matter, like, hot or not.
Yeah.
But, like,
There are people that don't care. There are people that just don't care.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There are people that are just like, she's hot or he's hot, and I don't care that they're dumb or whatever. Like, but those people aren't looking for long-term things. They just want to have sex with a hot person.
We are not talking to you, these people. You don't listen to our podcast anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yes, all of our loyal listeners, future listeners. No, I think that's. I don't know. Like, I totally agree with you, but I also think that it's super unfair, and that it's a pervasive sort of thing that we're all feeling of, like, okay, if a super hot guy can't even go up to you on the street and like look you up and down and be like, wow, you are like one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen. Would you like to go have a grab a cup of coffee? If that person can't say that, like, we definitely can't. And then so we have to resort to Tinder or to well, I didn't get your number when I first talked to you, but hey, I'm friends with you on Facebook, or I'm friends with your friend on Facebook, and so I'll send you a message that way. Which sounds super creepy, but in the context of how we live now, it's not that's less creepy than going to talk to you on the street. How does that make sense?
I don't know. I don't think it's
point.
less. I don't think it's necessarily less or more creepy, but it's again that first like your calling card that you come up to that person with, whether it's in person or through a platform. If the first thing is, I want to go out on a date with you, that's already kind of a barrier, because that, if we're talking,
It implies romantic things more than just like a conversation.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't think anybody wants to, like, anybody who is not looking for a one-night thing wants to feel like they're being talked to because of their looks. I mean, although it is the first thing that you see and what really calls you to that person, I don't think women necessarily want to be want to have that as what people like most about them, because if it's that superficial, then it could say that you're a shallow person, and that they're just there because of your looks and not because, like, about what else there is about you other than your looks. So if somebody who I don't know comes up to me and says, I want to go out on a date with you, I'd be like, no, because there needs to be something else.
Obviously there needs to be more than that,
there needs to be something else.
Listen, let me just say, like my first experience when
you're gonna show up for my show and not turn your fucking phone off?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was my mom.
How rude.
Put her on the phone.
So
put her on the line. We got Mrs. Maku.
Speak Brazilian.
You can translate.
So yeah, my first experience on Tinder, just me and my girlfriend for 2 years, we just broke up, and Tinder was just a thing. You were looking at your phone right now.
I'm gonna take a picture of us.
All right.
So keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, I wanted to use that and see people. I'm just gonna pause here for Matt to take his picture here, and I want to see how they worked. So I call up. We match in Tinder. Then we set up a date in a bar, and from the bar she invited me to her place, and she was driving, so she drove me to her place. We went to her place, then she dropped me back home, and
How
like
nice.
no, and like
That
in
is
the
really
way,
nice. I don't think I've ever had a girl do
in
that.
that way, I was thinking like, oh man, I'm a stud. And then I arrived and I was like, dear Lord, I've been used.
Only then you realize that.
No,
See, I
you
think
know
the
what?
difference is that we
Seriously.
know that
Yeah.
from the very
No,
beginning,
seriously,
whereas it
like-
took you a whole day to find that out.
Like, to be completely honest, that was like, it was, when I arrived home, I was like, that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, that's she knew it. She never called me back.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is a perfect example. Okay, women do this shit too. And I don't know, like, I was thinking kind of, like, it's the same lines. I actually had that happen not recently. A girl, like, totally used me that way. And yeah, like, it was just, like, I felt like telling her to fuck off. And I did, eventually. But, like, Pau's point about, like, I would never want somebody to come off the street and just be like, you're hot, let's go out. I would love it if somebody came up to me and said that. Like,
I said so many times.
I know.
You're just
It's true.
rejecting.
I know. Well, we go out. We just split the
Alright,
bill, that's all.
I'll give you some
But, like,
space. I'll give you some privacy.
I take you out. I take you places. No,
Okay.
like, I think that's a fundamental disconnect between men and women. That is just,
Absolutely.
like, just different wirings where, like, we want sex all the time. Like, it is literally on our mind all the time. And the fact that we can somehow suppress that into having even vaguely intelligent conversation with women is a feat in itself. Like, and you don't understand this. Like, you just don't.
No, I probably don't.
And there's things that we just don't understand, vice versa, right? But these are the types of things that I want to get to the root of, because it's so interesting to me that, like, that we are so wired for it,
Yeah.
right? As men.
Yeah.
Like, that is what it is. That it's biologically our function. And so everything that we do, literally everything, is in the pursuit of that, in a way. Like, even our life goals.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Hang on. Even our life goals can be. I'm not saying for all people, but I think that for, like, there is a biological thing that is driving you, that is like, if I can be a success at what I want, then I can have what I want that includes, like, a woman that, or a partner that is for me, you know, not like my property, but like, you know, a piece of you.
Which
like-
is like a complete mistake.
I'm not saying that that's
Because-
like, I'm not
because,
saying
you
that
know,
that's your actual, like, that's not saying that's your actual driver.
I'm not
I'm saying
saying-
that it's like a biological impulse that we, like, our cell structure knows, our brain knows that if we are successful, then women will be attracted to us.
Listen.
And so we strive for success.
No, what I think is inaccurate is not you saying that.
Okay.
I think the inaccuracy is in that society thought, because
It's not. That's my point. Is it's not a society thought. It's a biological thought.
no, it's not biological, man. That you have to be very successful to have.
No, that's not it.
So
that's
you're
not
talking
it.
about two things.
Yeah, I'm talking
Okay.
about. I'm
So
talking
break
about
it
how
down.
we. I'm talking about how we socially, yeah, depending on the social context, how we expose that very basic biological impulse that is mating.
It's because there's the biological. I totally agree with you, and there's the social.
But the social is in pursuit of the biological.
No, man. The social is just crazy. It's fucked up in the head, man.
Yeah, because it's in pursuit of this biological
No,
thing.
man,
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I'm gonna break it down. Right. The answer that you're looking for, it comes down to one thing: safety.
Safety.
Yes. Women are always looking over their shoulder for when there's a guy who is, you could say, after them.
Okay.
The first thing
In a
that,
bad way.
Yes, in
Okay.
a bad way. And it's not because, obviously, not all men, I know what you're going to say. Obviously, not all men are deserving of this level of care. But because there are men that can be almost predatory when it comes to like approaching women in situations like these, the first instinct is to be careful. You never fall headfirst into anything with a guy that you don't know because simply you don't know them. And yes, they could be great people, right? 99% of men are great people, or less or more.
Well, that's my question. Like, is the
But in terms of safety, I don't know if other women's experience is similar or how similar or different it is to mine. As a woman who comes from Mexico, who is constantly, well, not constantly, always on the lookout for any potential danger coming particularly from men, even in a safe environment with somebody who has the best intentions in mind, you are careful. And I mean, women can be thinking about sex all the time as well. It's just that there are other instincts that come before that, that kick in before the sex part.
So
And
you would
it's
say
safety.
that safety impulse is a biological thing, or is that's built on just like your not your personally, but our social context and the fact that yes, so sexual assaults and rapes and terrible things happen, and so you have to be on the wary side of things for that type of stuff. Do you think that drives that, or do you think it's a base biological instinct for safety?
Well, when it comes to levels of needs for human biologically, I think safety comes before mating. Having shelter, having food, and having a place where you feel safe.
Well, having a mate would be part of that too, though, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily, though. If mating,
Well,
if
in
you
our
talk just about mating, then it's just once the mating is over with, you can both go your own
well,
way.
but
Safety, but safety is definitely a thing to consider way before the actual mating
Okay.
part.
Can
But
I-
we can still think about sex all the time. That's totally fair.
We were talking about this a couple of months ago, and that's one thing. Like, in South America, Central America, whatever, we have this constant fear of walking in the street and being mugged, or someone coming with a gun or with a knife. But we, as men, our most fear is to be mugged, or to be robbed, or to be shot. But women have a fear that's way, like it's huge, which is to be abused or to be raped. We don't feel that in the skin.
Yeah.
They carry that generation from generation, and that's like something that it's
we just
really
can't
fucked.
comprehend.
We can't comprehend that.
Yeah, like that's. I mean, we were talking earlier about coming from like an impoverished country versus growing up the way that I did, which is, you know, in affluence, to be honest. Like, that's kind of like the feeling, right? Like, in that setting, you feel that, like, we have no comprehension of how it feels to walk down the street like that. My thought on it is, like you say, 99% of men are not like that, and I think that's true. So is the number of people that may or may not be this way worth living in like constant fear of it like that? Like that, like to me, that's no different than walking around in fear that I'm gonna be in a terrorist bombing. Like, it could happen, but like the statistics are so astronomical that worrying about it is not even worth worrying about. Oh. And I'm not saying it's not worth worrying about. I'm just saying, like...
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you actually think that there are that many people out there who will do that. And maybe there are, because we hear about it a lot, but we also hear about terrorism a lot, and we also hear about car accidents a lot.
It's not only a matter of think that someone is or not. It's almost instinctive in our case.
Yeah, you have to build yourself up with enough courage to go someplace and not feel like fearful for your life all the time, because that is clearly no way to live. You have to get over it at some point, but there are measures that you take in order to avoid running into an interaction like that. And the first of all is definitely being wary of who you start a conversation with, because you don't know, and well, they could be really great people. You really never know, and you just need a few moments to really like gauge up how safe or not that person is in general in that situation, which could be in a public place, during daytime, or anything else. But it is a precaution that at least where I grew up, every woman takes, and it's always there. I was just reading this morning about the news of yesterday. I read the news about one woman in Mexico, a 19-year-old teenager, who took a cab home, a Cabify cab from the nightclub to her house, never made it home. And you're hoping that a service like Cabify will offer safety for their riders, because obviously you're going to want to take a Cabify after a night of drinking, right? You're not going to want to drive, or it might just be too late for anybody else, and you're counting on that safety. And when it isn't, when you realize that you've let your guard down, that's when it happens. So even if it has never happened to you, because you hear about it happening to other people, you don't want to let your guard down ever. If you're intoxicated, if you let your guard down, that's when it's easier to happen. So you keep your guard up, not because some danger is going to be around you all the time, but because if it is, you want to be as prepared as you can be to avoid that unpleasant interaction.
And I get that, and like I don't come from a culture that has this very, like, even like Mexico, I don't think is that bad, but like we watched that, you know, even that little bit of that documentary that Brandon presented about India, and like it just like I still can't even really think about it. Like, just awful, the things that they describe doing to these people, and you can see the culture just being like, well, they shouldn't have been out at night, and you're like, what? Yeah. What?
Yeah.
But
it's not only there. Now, this instinctive fear that we're talking about, it's just like a practical example. When I arrived here in Canada, there's a creek that I had to go through to get into my house in North Vancouver.
Yeah.
So I was coming back home late. It was around 10 o'clock, and someone was coming towards me by the other end. Oh. I froze it. I was ready to run or to punch or to... Because back home, that's what happens, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you really tighten up, and you're like... That's when your fight or flight reaction is... You know it's about to kick in.
Yeah.
That just triggers it.
I didn't thought about it. I didn't say, no, this is kind of... No, man, I was ready to...
Yeah.
Because there were so many times that I had to run or I had to do something. So, like, one of those times, it was just like... was late at night. I just got into a very bad neighborhood in the city that I know of. So I just put my hoodie on, and I just like make like I was crazy. And just,
People stay the fuck away from you.
Yeah,
That's not a bad strategy.
That is
and
a good
people were just
strategy.
like looking at me, and I was like totally crazy, just like going in the street crazy, because I thought I knew it. If I was just like walking straight, like I am the man.
Yeah.
These people just like they were going to mug me, but like I did really play like a crazy guy on the street.
That's a good call. I'll consider that.
clever.
Although, but like
It's not
I was
only
thinking
clever, it's
about
just
it.
like surviving, you know.
It's,
Yeah.
it's
That's the
all
same
about
strategy.
survival, and you won't let your guard down because there's danger around you all the time. But because if there is, you don't want to be caught off guard.
Right. But I mean, obviously there is an innate aspect to that too, because I feel that as well. And somebody that grew up in very safe circumstance, like I don't even remember locking our doors in our houses as kids. Like I still in Calgary, living like in the city in Calgary, like I would leave my door unlocked sometimes and like not even really worry about it. But at the same time, if I was in that situation, and like yeah, just like in an alley or something, or like just walking down the street in the dark and somebody's coming the same way, you just get prepared.
But not in Calgary.
I know,
Not
yeah,
in
you do.
Canada.
No, I still do.
I don't
That's what
do
I'm saying.
anymore.
You don't?
No.
Okay, that's interesting because I do.
I used to walk in São Paulo, looking over my shoulder every 10, 15 minutes.
Well, I'm not looking over my shoulder, but like,
and that's
I
literally.
find it interesting that you come from a very dangerous place, and then you come to a much safer country, and you don't feel that anymore. Versus me, who comes from a very safe place in the same country, and even in my own city, I'm not saying I lived in I would ever live in fear or anything, but in a situation where it's nighttime and I'm crossing paths with somebody like this, especially like a big dude, I probably have my keys clutched in my hand in my pocket, just because. You never know.
All right, now I'm gonna put another.
I did see somebody get the shit kicked out of them, and the guy followed me, and it really freaked me out.
I'm gonna put another situation to that big dude coming in towards you.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were a girl, just like.
Yeah, I can't.
You see,
I know.
that's the kind
This
of.
is what's fun about these conversations, you guys.
But I think we should go on to something a little bit nicer.
All right.
Let's, but adjacent, sort of.
Okay, I would love to. I would love, Paulina, for you to tell a little bit more about your the project, the series project that you're talking about. Yeah,
awesome.
about the woman in the radio and the harassment place, which is adjacent.
Sure.
Absolutely,
Talk a little bit more about
Well, while in film school, I worked on a project which consisted on developing a TV pilot for an original drama series. My project is called Offside, or Fuera de Lugar in Spanish, which is the target language. It's about a woman who is she's a news presenter on a television sports network.
Mm-hmm.
And it's set in Mexico City, which is, it's where I grew up in, and really the society that I know best in. I don't see this story playing out in North America, anywhere in the United States or Canada at all, because, well, it could be to a certain level, but not to the degree that I'm hoping to explore in my project. And the main theme for this show is about renovating oneself, and well, that could apply to several instances in daily life. I particularly wanted to explore sexism in the workplace, particularly in Mexican society, and especially somewhere where the difference between men and women is so wide. It's
Sports broadcasting?
Sports broadcasting, and well, I was in Canada while developing that project, and explaining the situation to my Canadian instructors was sometimes a bit of a challenge, because they couldn't really imagine a woman being treated in such a way because of the way they knew that sports broadcasting worked in Canada. But once you open up that perspective to a society where it is acceptable to deny a woman a job because she is a woman. I think that's when it really started to interest them, and how I got all the help that I could need from my instructors being a lot more receptive to what I was saying. So I have a scene in my pilot that takes place in a strip club. A few of my instructors gave me feedback and said that they found it hard to believe that producers and technical people at a lower level were finding it so easy to just go to a strip club after work. So I went back to my friend Gabriel back home, who has worked on ESPN and several sports outlets over time, and I told him about this. I told him that my instructor said that they found it hard to believe that they would go to a strip club, and he said it is absolutely real, 100%. They late at night, because some of these people end their shifts at 2 in the morning. It's television, right? It runs 24/7. They would very casually, as if they were saying, let's go for coffee, let's go for lunch, they would say, let's go get some girls. And the way in which they treated them inside the place, I've never been to a strip club either, I gotta admit that, and I don't really want to go there, but I've been looking around for somebody who would tell me about their experience in strip clubs, and I think I got it right when I said that these producers and these people who work in television not only treat women who are at their level, quote unquote, in the workplace, but also women who they pay to give them some kind of sexual service in exchange, right? So this is a project that I feel very passionate about, and I'm trying to get other people to read it as well, to get feedback, or to probably get it to the right person who will want to take interest, because I think it's very important, not just for women and not just for men, but also for women to know when their rights or not or their person, like they're not getting the treatment they deserve, and identifying it is the first step in achieving gender equality.
Okay.
I hope that my show does that, and if I need to work it a little more, to make it a little more obvious, to make it a comedy even, to sort of like mock certain things and to sort of like create this image out of mockery, that's also fine. But I do feel like it's very important that the media reflects or somehow tries to educate a little bit in a not so rigid sense, but that depicts what kind of behavior should be called out.
What I thought was really interesting, what you told me about, was the perspective that you approached it. Can you just like give a synopsis, or you rather not, of the project?
Yes. Well, it takes place at a network in Mexico City, as I mentioned before. The main characters are two women. The main character is named Nicole, and she is a presenter who has been working at the network for several years, and her goal is to break out from that, just like the presenter type of person that she is right now. You know, the hot girl who posts cute pics of herself on Instagram and men follow her and everything. She wants to stop being that sort of like Barbie doll that just stands in front of the camera and makes everything prettier. She wants to be a respected analyst, but she feels like she depends on other people to get that opportunity, and I think she has to learn that if other people won't give it to her, she has to create her own. And that's a hard path to take, but it's still worth it at this point in time, even if you have to work 5 times harder than any guy to get the same level of respect that they do. Well, it's totally worth it, and you're just paving the way for other women to be able to do that with, instead of 5 times more work, 4 times work, and so on and so on. But I think that there need to be examples of women who will not conform to what other people or what other men tell them to be. And it also, the second main character, that's a younger girl named Stephanie, and what I want Nicole to also portrays somewhat of the internalized misogyny that some women still sort of like go by. Especially in Mexico, I found that a lot of women still internalize misogyny and don't see it. And I think that it's very important for women to see it first so that men can also see it, right? If we in our own skin don't see what's being, what way we should treat ourselves and respect ourselves, then other people won't. So it starts by, I think it's first step right there.
Really
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I like that. And you know, like, I think that it plays in more markets than you'd think. Like, I think that there is, I mean, it's definitely better here, stuff like that, I think, overall. But at the same time, I think because of that, we like to think that it just doesn't exist, which is not true at all.
And
Like, obviously, there's pay inequality, and there's not, I don't think there's ever really, like, well, she's a woman, so I won't hire her, ever.
Not that open, probably.
Not exactly, not that open. But, well, if only one woman applies to the job and there's 10 guys, A, there's more chance that a guy will get it just because, but B, I mean, like, men are just comfortable working with each other a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of the time that's not true. Like, personally, I like having women around because you need to have different perspectives on everything. Like, it's important, I think. But, you know, I worked in finance before coming out here, and I worked on a floor or in an office with 150 investment advisors, and I think 3 of them were women.
wow.
And they all have associates, myself included. I was an associate, and that group was probably about 80 to 90% women.
I think that young girls from a very early age are somehow shown that there are certain paths that are easier or better for women than they are for men. So it's not because women are not capable, but from very early in their lives, they are sort of shown that there are careers that are better for women. Not in that very strict sense, but if a young girl is exposed to careers that are sort of like more for women, like psychology, communication, like in my dear alma mater, Libero. Oh my god. That's the interest you take from a very early age, and they're not as exposed to, for example, science and mathematics and engineering from a very early age, because that's not for girls. You know, they're more interested in other things. So I think it starts from very early, that exposure, and it could be totally subconscious. But if we were a little more conscious about what areas of interest boys and girls are exposed to based on their gender, we could probably change that, not change that entirely, but start a little change that starts showing in a few years.
Paulina, would you agree that, like, for the past years, and not only, I would say more about Brazil, but we talk about that too, Mexico as well, the most important social movements that happen in Brazil, like in the past years, were made by homosexual people, women, and
other minorities,
students, and not even like university students, like the
high school students.
High school students, they stopped the country like a year and a half
That's
ago.
cool. That's cool.
It was really cool. And my question is, would you say that we are going through a second women's revolution, as it was in the 50s?
I think that women are starting to realize what behavior is okay and what isn't, and not just realizing that, but also calling it out. I think every day more and more women that I know and that I don't know are starting to stand up for themselves when they aren't treated in a manner that is equal. And I do see a lot of women just talking about it even more and having a conversation. I think is a starting point in a change. And although several of the determining aspects of how a country or how a city is run still depends on men, slowly women are getting in there as well to have an equal share in what's in the decisions, you know what I mean? And I know it's hard and it could be scary because women constantly get talked over in meetings and professional settings. There are less women, and even amongst women, sometimes they are pitted against each other. It's hard to confront that fear, but I feel like once these young girls who aren't yet tainted by those impressions, it'll be better for women to reach gender equality. Not an absolute one, but it will be a bit more of a tangible reality soon enough if girls are courageous enough.
I think that that's coming a lot quicker than some women, especially today, kind of would like, or like present themselves as thinking. I don't know, like I see so many kind of like very pro-feminist things get posted by like people such as yourself and a lot of my friends, which is like, it's great, but a lot of it also very much attacks men in a way that like is valid in some ways, but also as somebody who has grown up with no prejudice against women and totally believes in equality, and many people across our generation feel that way. For the vast majority of people, you know, that are like under 30, let's say, feel this way. And so when I see when I see that stuff and I read it, it kind of irks me a little bit, because I'm like, I don't feel that way about people, and yet I feel like I'm getting vilified just because.
Matt, I have a friend that told me, a woman friend that told me. I said the same thing to her. You know what she told me?
What did she say?
She said, "It's not about you anymore."
No, I get that. No, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
And you know, like, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I understand.
No, I get that, but like, I guess. Yeah.
You've always had certain rights and expectations laid on you that aren't necessarily that vilify you, right? And once you start feeling that those things get taken away, you feel irked, right? Which is the initial assumption that you will not be weaker than somebody else, right? And it's alright, I totally understand where you're coming from, but it's definitely not about that. And if you feel irked, it's because that's what you've been given all the time, and now that it's different, obviously it feels different. It feels like a shift, right? But it doesn't mean to vilify you, or if you know that yourself, you are. No, wait. Let me rephrase that. But if you feel like that's like you're being personally attacked, you're not. You're definitely not. And even if you feel in that group of people who are being, let's say, called out on something, it's never meant to be that. And if it doesn't mean to point you out, but it's to sort of like encourage a self-reflection in case that if you've ever, not because you're a bad person or misogynist, but if you've ever incurred in any kind of behavior that doesn't make women feel equal to men, then it's a good moment of self-reflection. And you could probably change that if you find that, and I think that's the ultimate goal for this. If you find that other men's behavior reflects your own, even if your intention is not to feel anybody else feel unequal, then it's a good. Then you can very quietly, personally change that, and you'll make the people around you feel more comfortable and better around you. I think.
Matt, you
Yeah.
know what's something that when I was talking to
Just
friend
before
of
you go,
mine-
I just want to say, like, it is an internal thing because often when I see that stuff posted, I purposely, like, I have thoughts about it,
yeah.
but I don't
Yeah.
comment on it. And I
Yeah.
actually did with Exandria the other
Yeah.
day, and it did not turn out
Yes,
well.
It won't.
And so I was like, oh yeah, that's why I don't do this. Like, fuck.
But you know why?
Yeah,
It's because
it's not about me.
it's not about it. And
It's not about us. It's not about men. It's about women and their
That's right.
struggles
but,
and stuff.
But
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you something.
yeah,
We, Caucasian white man.
yeah.
I mean, I say white man because in my country I'm white. I'm here. Here I'm
Fair
Latino,
enough.
but
Okay.
in my country I'm just like
Yeah.
a white boy.
Okay.
We are. We have to improve our thoughts. Wait,
hold on, because this is what bothers me. Like, I don't think personally I do, and so the implication that we do. is bullshit.
Let me finish the shit.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. What I'm saying is that we are not getting where they are getting. Our our trend of thought, especially when it comes to that stuff, it's hitting into a wall that we cannot surpass that. So we feel attacked, but it's because we have to think better than that, man. We have to do better than that. We're becoming, and you know what? We are becoming the most uninteresting people on earth.
Yeah.
Caucasian white men
I know.
are the most uninteresting people in the world because we have nothing else to say. We already said, and we have said the same. Wait, we have said the same thing for the past 50, 60 years, and now there are other people saying stuff that are much more valuable to evolve as human beings.
Yeah, I would agree.
As we do, and now we are having our structure being. We're seeing that. Wait, maybe I was. Maybe I thought I didn't have prejudice, but actually I do. So you know what? I don't say that I never say that I'm a feminist because I know that I have a lot of sexism patterns on me. I try to fight against them. I try to evolve, but there's a long
sometimes
path.
they're totally engraved in your brain, and you're not a bad person for that. If that's how you grew up, well, there's no changing that. But I do think you're like quite a feminist because I've had awesome conversations with you, and even though you have certain behavior patterns, you are aware of them, and you actively try to correct them once you know that you're doing.
That's recent. That was before.
I don't care how recent it is. You're doing it now, and that's
Well,
amazing.
But so isn't that, though, to say that, because you said just before that in the same sentence, like, you can't help the way you grew up and that's okay, but it's not okay. Because we have the capacity to learn and change ourselves. Like Joao was talking about, like, I need to do it in any other ways as well. Like, there's no excuse anymore for prejudice, in my opinion. And so, like, it doesn't matter how you grew up. I'm sorry. Like, you grew up in fucking strict Christian household that was racist and homophobic. You have a fucking cell phone that can tell you that all that stuff's bullshit. So shut up and figure it out.
Totally. In the way you grew up with, you can't change that now, but you certainly can change how you react and how these things affect you and how you treat other people. If you grew up in a super strict Christian household, well, you can't change that, but you definitely can choose how you act and how you think and how you reflect upon your own behavior. So even if it's just recent that you've started really considering whether something you say or do is sexist, that's my end goal for me having these conversations. If I find that you did something that somehow is sexist, I don't want to make you feel ashamed for it, even though sometimes I'm so passionate about this that I go a little overboard with my reactions. But I do try to explain in a very calm and polite manner, so that whoever I'm talking to is open to hearing what I'm saying. If you did something that I think is, or not that I think, but that is sexist, I will try to say, hey, listen, this thing that you're doing is making me feel this way. and I don't mean to make you feel bad for it, but next time a situation like this arises, try thinking of it this way or reacting this way, and if you take that home and you can really internalize sort of like that question that I'm planting in your brain, that's like a successful conversation for me. So I don't want to make you feel ashamed, because if you grew up, you can't change that, but you can affect how you react next time or how you think next time, and that's a small victory for me when having these conversations. So if anything that you do when I call you out and you feel attacked, well, get over that. Give yourself a couple of seconds to get over that like feeling of being attacked, and then reflect on what I'm trying to say to you, and it's never to make you feel ashamed for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, some women definitely do like antagonize a lot. Very like a small minority, obviously, but I've never really felt that way from any of my friends. But it's more like the articles that get posted and stuff that everybody like rah-rahs around, and then I read the article and I'm like, okay, yeah, like a lot of it is nice, but a lot of it is sexist, but are against men, and that's like this kind of goes back to what you got about with like, well, the white men, like us Caucasian white men have nothing interesting left to say. Which, like, I kind of... Oh, no, dude, hold on, let me talk now. I totally agree. But part of that evolution is, well, yeah, I am evolving, and I am learning, and I want to participate with these things, but I feel automatically excluded from an opinion because my ancestors enslaved people, or my ancestors came here and, like, raped and pillaged this land, and all that stuff is terrible. I didn't do it. My ancestors were abusive against women and stuff like that, and were against women's rights and things. I'm not, and so when we're moving forward through this, you know, as we get close to equality, not just gender equality, but like racial equality and all this type of stuff, part of that is allowing that voice to have more of a yes, like this is one of the topics I want to talk about. Yes, there, like, globally there is like a white person oppression, like that is like without a doubt, right? Like, and that's just been systematically built through imperialism from Britain and from the US and like all that type of stuff. That's just how our society has evolved, and we need to fight against it. And in order to fight against it, in a one-on-one conversation, not in a context of like, well, I'm white straight male and you're a black, you know, gay person, and so you've obviously had terrible struggles that I have no concept of whatsoever, but I'm trying to understand it, and so can we not have a one-on-one talk where my opinion on it is just not just as valid, but is entertained to the point, like Pau, you said, that we can have a polite discussion about it, where I am not considered racist for maybe saying something that might be considered racist because I just don't know.
All right.
But I'm going to give you one example. Okay. So there was a woman that worked on my... Oh, no, never mind. It doesn't matter. Go about your thing.
Okay. Well, maybe help... I just thought of that. Maybe a thing that could help us as Caucasian men is to think that for the past 20 years of social discussion, we were asleep. Whereas minorities had to think and had to evolve in order to survive, or in order to have equal opportunities in society. In these 20-30 years that they were talking about and revolutionizing, and we were just still. And now, just think about, just wait. I know you were feeling personally attacked. But
not
maybe,
personally attacked, just not
But-
acknowledged because of the
but listen.
past terrible transgressions of many different, white
Matt,
cultures.
What I'm saying is that we are now in a position that we have to listen more than to argue, because we have for the past I don't know how many years our opinion was almost the only one that counted.
Yeah.
So now.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't count anymore.
So now, we are in a point where, okay, but what I'm saying doesn't count? No, it counts, but it's just not that important.
Okay.
Wait, can I respond to that? Just
Sure.
because this is okay.
Because we haven't evolved enough socially to be part of this discussion. I think that's why I'm trying to learn more than just to say.
But can't you? Okay, like obviously you need to listen to learn. But and I'm totally on board with everything you're saying. I'm also just I'm feeling like it means that a white sounds so fucking like racist.
You want a moment to
Well, no, this is part of my point of we were talking about Facebook and seeing that stuff posted and then commenting on it. Is like when I comment on Facebook now, everybody sees what I've posted, and it could be way off the reservation. Who knows? I don't know really, because I'm asking questions and it's not really a fully formed thought. And yeah, you're allowed to pick those apart, but I don't want to have that discussion with my name attached to it, even though we're doing it right here. I don't know, it just feels different where anybody who's anybody can see it. Although again, we're just talking about it here. Anyways, I'm going off on a different train.
I think what Joao was trying to say here is that it's not that your opinion doesn't matter, but sometimes when the issue is not related to you, then it's probably not the best time to voice your opinion. If there is an issue going on right now regarding women or people of color, it's probably better to let their voices be heard and maybe let your opinion take a backseat for a while if it doesn't affect you in a certain way. So if people are fighting for their own rights and you have and that doesn't affect you whatsoever, then it's probably best to let other people talk. Then it's not that it doesn't matter.
But if I don't express my opinion to somebody like that, then I won't learn about what is maybe wrong with it or even right with it. This is kind of my point. Well, keep your opinion out of it. But how is that equal? I'm not saying that my opinion should necessarily force an issue either way. I'm personally, I'm curious about about kind of any type of, political, socioeconomic issue that is going on. And so if I can have a discussion with somebody who is involved in that community or something, I'm going to ask them a lot of questions about it, and I'm going to give my opinion about something because I want to hear what their opinion is of my opinion.
Yeah, but you're right there. Asking questions is fine, and anybody will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And it's perfectly fine. And I feel like
I have to tiptoe around that stuff so much.
I want people to ask questions so that I can explain to them why this or that is important to me, or the issue I am are talking about, right? For example, a bunch of men passed legislation so that women in, I don't remember what state in the U.S., so that abortions were made illegal. Why are a bunch of men discussing that instead of women?
Yeah.
It's not their bodies and it's not affecting them.
Yeah,
that's again.
I totally agree.
Okay, can we go for a break?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
thinking the same thing.
Can we play the song here?
Sure. I'll
With,
see if I
Paulina.
can.
What is it?
You know what
my
it is.
Just just put your microphone down to your speaker
Why don't we
for
just
now.
can we attach this?
We probably can.
We need some
I just
technician
need
here.
to. I would take me a second to figure it out here.
We're gonna play this song.
Yeah.
Day by day and night by night, she will be there out of sight, just waiting. So seductive and so smooth, she will swiftly make a move. Understated, but now she's gone, and I can't carry on. Night by night and day by day, a crooked spy will make you sway. Contemplating, so succinct and so sincere, she will shed a single tear. So engaging, but now she's gone, and I can't carry on. There are spirited, 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 there are spirited. I feel her spirit
Alright, you're
Don't want
back.
to see it, that's for sure. That's gonna happen. All right. Okay. Let's veer into something a little bit more abstract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to say one last thing
Okay,
to
go
wrap
ahead.
up our previous conversation.
For sure.
I think that whoever feels personally attacked, not by Regina George, but by feminist comments, what we want those people to do is not to feel attacked, definitely. We want them to be receptive and listen to what they're saying, and to make sure that it's the right time to voice your opinion. So those white men who are passing legislation on abortion, probably shouldn't really have a say on that, or other people should also have a say. Different people, say people who have a uterus and are actually concerned with abortions. So I'd say take that example, you know, don't feel personally victimized. They're not taking away any of your current rights. Just let other people talk.
But do you take any solace in the fact that people of your generation that will soon be moving into positions of power, like in politics and stuff like that, as these people, you know, the people that you're talking about that are in these abortion debates and stuff, that yes, are all white men, but they're all like 70-year-old white men, which makes it even worse, but also means that they're gonna die within like a decade. And that the people that start to take their places will be people that are in their 30s and 40s, and people, you know, potentially, people of our age groups and stuff like that. That's what I meant when I said, like, there will probably be a pretty rapid shift relatively soon. Not just in feminism, but in environmentalism and in, like, all of these kind of social issues that we are really fighting for. You know, maybe not a lot of us actively, which is a problem of our generation, but, like, you know, pretty much against everything that, like, somebody like Donald Trump stands for. Like, you have a whole generation of people that is a wave of, like, nope, we're, like, that's not going to happen. And that's why I think that somebody like Donald Trump happened, because it's like this last gasp of this, you know, group of people that feel their lifestyle that has been in error in many ways being, like, ripped from their hands, you know, like these old people that, you know, people didn't mix races when I was a kid, and, like, you know, whatever, like, crazy stuff like that. That's getting, like, really, really gripped away, and, like, this is like, oh shit, like, it's really the last time they have a grip of it. Boris.
Hey, Boris.
Woo!
Hi, buddy.
All right, sorry about that, landlord. I mean, the producer.
Yeah, I was just
Executive producer.
Yeah, the executive producer, the guy that owns the studios, telling us.
Telling Paulina that after the show we have some hot dogs provided by Warner Brothers.
Yes, provided by Warner Brothers.
And that
Our
we are in no way
sponsors and-
affiliated.
Thank you for Warner Brothers. Thank you, Warner Brothers, for providing our food stolen from the set.
Yeah.
Not stolen.
We're stealing almost from
given.
the trash.
From the trash. Okay, all right. So
Okay.
let's move on. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got many more podcasts. We'll get into it. I have a feeling Paulina will be a regular contributor.
I
Okay.
would love to.
Yes. So, something more abstract, and I want to get your guys'. Can we? That's kind of nice.
Like music.
Background music.
As long as we change up the genre a little bit. I do like the.
No, I would change the genres.
Just float between them.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay. Cool. All right. It's gonna kind of undercut some tones maybe, but we'll see how it goes.
You be the DJ.
Yeah. Okay. So, afterlife. I don't know what your guys' like affiliations are or anything like that. And Boris, you're not supposed to have a bone on the couch. You should pull your jacket out from under.
I mean.
He'll just slobber all over it. Boris.
Speaking about
Fine. No, it's okay.
afterlife.
Okay, wait, hold on.
And a bone inside of Boris' mouth. I think that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what your guys' religious affiliations or backgrounds are. I'll just give you kind of my spiel, and I want to hear your take on things. You know, I like fully against most organized religion. I grew up Catholic. Like, my mom's family is, like, really, really Catholic. And so, like, we'd go to church, you know, Easters and stuff like that. And but by the time I was, like, 14, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not showing up to this anymore. And so, but I don't think that necessarily. I think that there is a version of maybe an afterlife that can be explained by science. And, like, I'd love to talk to somebody that actually kind of would, like, be scientific about it and maybe be able to debunk a few thoughts. But, like,
Unfortunately, we went to film school.
Yeah, unfortunately, but that means that we can use our imaginations, right, to think about things. So I'll lay this down for you. So, like, and I wrote a script that's along the lines. I think I told you about this, but what if, like, energy has to be conserved, right? And there are so many different sort of forms of energy that we can't perceive as people, you know, like radiations that we can't see, and you know, just, you know, like Boris the dog can sense the world in a totally different way than I can, you know. He feels emotions in a way, like, which are obviously like drawn off of, you know, feeling like my heartbeat, or like he can hear my heartbeat, so he could hear it like pace up, which would make him like, you know, so like because he can sense these things differently, he's, you know, his view of the world is different. And so because we have these different energy levels, my thought is when we go to die, all of these electrical impulses are moving at like the speed of light, you know, in our brain. You know, those are our thoughts and our memories and, you know, our intelligence. Like, that has to go somewhere. Like, the energy has to go somewhere, and it could be just like farted out in heat. And that's probably what it is. But like, what if like for that last moment, you know, when like you just get this rush of electrical impulses in your brain, what if that, to your perspective, lasted forever? You know, because these things are moving at the speed of light, and time is relative when that's happening, and you're basically on this, like your mind is in this space, right? Your consciousness is in this space. What are you seeing? Who knows? Like, we don't know, right? Because this has all only happened to people who are dead. So, but like, I think that it's totally, I'm totally open with no religious affiliation at all. I'm totally open to the possibility of an afterlife that involves like a consciousness moving to a different plane or a different dimension that we can't perceive. And, you know, maybe it can like fly off at the speed of light into like a different galaxy dimension, or maybe they do float around, like who knows? Like, we don't know these things. And so I am totally closed to anything that we know the facts about. Like, if it's a fact, it's a fact until somebody shows me that it's not a fact anymore. But stuff that we don't know, I am totally like just open to hear people's kind of thoughts on it. And yeah, there was a movie I saw that really kind of made me think about it, and it was called Iris or something like that. And it was about a biological, an evolutionary biologist who was studying worms. And so he's like dissecting worms, and he's like looking at them under a microscope and stuff like that. And he starts dating this woman who's very spiritual and like not like in a yoga sense, or yeah, in like a yoga sense, not in like a religious sense, really. Like, she's very kind of, you know, about different energy levels and stuff like that. And so, well, actually no, she was really religious. Anyway, so they get into the stuff, into his work, and she's kind of questioning his like whole process, which he obviously believes people just die, you know, you just become dirt and you whatever. And she's like, she kind of has the same thought that I just brought up, you know, what about like these different sort of like levels that we can't really perceive? And he was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, consider the worm. Like, what are the senses of the worm? And he was like, well, the worm can taste and it can feel. And so she's like, so the worm has no concept of light. You could not explain to the worm what light is. And so, who's to say that because there are so many things around us that we can't perceive. You know, we need like a bunch of different type radioactive telescopes and shit like that to be able to perceive different wavelengths of light and stuff like that. Who's to say that these things are not, you know, there's just like a bunch of shit happening all around us that we just don't see or feel.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you got in a very philosophical discussion here.
I hope your mom's not listening to this.
She knows I feel this way. She's tried to convert me a lot.
I don't know. I grew up in a not very cheers.
Cheers.
Not a super religious Catholic household. My grandparents are very Catholic. My parents are. I am not as much, although I acknowledge that most of my upbringing was, and some of my experience is based on that. From what I remember from my classes in high school and university, if you can't see it, does it exist? If you can't feel it, does it exist? So, I don't know, this is definitely not my area of expertise, but...
That's fine, just riff about it.
I don't know, lately,
As a writer, what would you consider, if you had to write a movie about the afterlife, like how would you imagine that?
Lately I feel a lot more interested in how nature, when it dies, how it feeds back into the earth.
Okay.
So a tree, once it dies, it falls on the ground, and plants and other life forms feed on it, so that other can feed on them and continue this cycle of life. I don't know if there's let's say like a non-organic equivalent of that, but I think as a writer it would be very interesting to explore ways in which you could say that this energy or that this material moves around in an ecosystem, right? So could it be instead of organic matter, could it be in terms of knowledge, in terms of thoughts? So how does your knowledge feed back into the earth to create new types of knowledge, right?
That's interesting. Like an ancestral sort of knowledge of, like, not actual memories, but just like kind of what? You're talking about just nature? Just like cell memory or something like that, or what?
It would be fun to explore it in terms of memory and things that can't necessarily be recorded, because obviously everything that is recorded does get transferred to future generations, right? But stuff that we can't record, like even feelings. I don't know how. I totally don't have any prepared thoughts for this, but this is literally what's coming to my mind right now. So if you could, let's say, recycle those feelings and experiences and thoughts that aren't necessarily recorded in written language or in any kind of recorded language, how would it turn out? I don't know. What do you think, Joe? Take me off the spot.
I don't know. I like where you went with all that. I like your input about that too, Matt. I share a similar vision to that. Just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
For some reason, although life ends, I think we never end. Like, as I wouldn't say spiritual, because the spiritual comes with so many already made up bullshit of religion, and but let's put into energy, as you said. I think my perspective, and that's the thing, I don't think I can, I don't want to persuade no one to think about that,
Right, right.
So that's, for me, it's more, it's liberating, because as you, I was brought up in a very religious Catholic environment, where we had to think the same way all the time. My input on that is that what if it's actually a what if instead of that's the way it is.
Right.
For me, it's like, what if we were actually not able to die, not in the body or mind. I think this just goes. But what if we just go to another level or another parallel or another, like, that's quantum physics.
Yeah, a different dimension.
It's a
bunch of
different-
parallel universes.
something like that. Because another thing that the physics says, it's been a long time that in the physics, how do I say it in English? You don't create, you don't end, everything transforms itself, right? Maybe that's what happened to us. We just transform ourselves, and just go to another level, and that actually makes me feel quite comfortable. I feel comfortable
That's interesting.
about death when I feel that, that's just like one stage. Like it's just like a body and a mind that's gonna go, and like I don't worry about that. My only concern is actually losing people.
Yeah.
Because then I know that for a fact, if I lose like my mom or my dad or my sister, if I overlive them like 70 or 80 years, it'll be 7 or 8 years that I'm probably gonna have that pain of loss for a while. But then this pain is not eternal as well. You know that's gonna end sooner or later. Better later, to be honest.
I think that depends on how your life is turning out, maybe.
Well, you're at that.
Yeah.
In that case.
I don't know. It's something. I wouldn't say I grew up in a really religious household. Like my mom did. Her family was very Catholic, so my grandparents were very Catholic, and my mom was quite Catholic, but my dad, like, he didn't fucking care, and so, like, I don't know. Religion itself, I think, like, strives to explain things that, I mean, I think that's where it's rooted, and that for some reason they just, like, stopped at some point and said, like, nope.
Yeah.
This is the story, and that's the story. Whereas, like, if you look back at like Greek mythology and stuff like that, and like Norse mythology, that like really that's what they were doing too, right? They're coming up with stories to try to explain what was happening around the world. Like, the sun goes across the sky. Like, how do you explain that from a primitive point of view? Well, this god is carrying it in a chariot, and blah 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 blah. Like, okay. But like the reason, if you really get into that type of mythology, like it gets super fucked up with like Zeus raping people on Earth and like spawning like half demigod children and like just crazy fucked up stuff. And the reason why it did that is because new things kept happening. That needed to be explained, and they came up with the only thing that they could do, which was like craziness at the time. But interesting to look back on retroactively.
I'm not even sure that we can do this.
What do you mean?
Well, what if all of those things were metaphorical? You know what I mean? Like, are we the Greeks from the past to take the perspective from
They
today?
were all... Well, they...
Listen, that's...
Okay.
Are we the Greeks from the past to just, like, read their stuff and say, oh, so that's what they're thinking about? But we're reading this, like, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000 years later with, like, an input that is totally different of what they were thinking in that time, you know? It's a totally different mindset. It's just, like, a totally different... And, like, even if you go to countries like India, sometimes you just don't understand how they think. It's just different. They evolve in a different way. Mm-hmm. When I was there, I remember that my thought sometimes was so limited that they treated me like a child.
For example?
For example, I was staying in this hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Of this very small hotel in these Indian people, and the guy would just come every day and raise the fare that I was paying for the room.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, today is a different fare. It's more. Today is a different fare. It's more. Okay. The last day I was there for 5 days. The last day I asked him to leave my bag there, because my train would depart at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I don't know, 11 in the morning. And he said, yes, as long as you pay that. So So the guy, so I just told the guy, I said, you know what? You're greedy.
Oh.
You are greedy. And he looked at me, he said, why am I greedy? So, because you want to charge me to just leave the bag here? So yeah, well, if I'm greedy, you're greedy. Because I want you to pay and you don't want to pay.
Yeah.
The hotel is mine.
Yeah.
You want to leave the bag in the hotel and you think you can just come here
Yeah.
and say that, do it for free?
Yeah.
And that just like swiped me out of my feet. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
How can I think something stupid like that? And this guy just like with two words
crushed
just like,
you.
Wow.
you see, that's a different
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah,
We
it's
need
true.
a reality check from time to time. Man.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what? One of the reasons that I was brought up in a Catholic environment where everything is guilt. So maybe I would do that by guilt, but the Roman Catholic didn't get that into that culture that much, So it's another way of thinking. It's been 2,000, 3,000 years that they think differently than we do.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of contemporary thing. Now we're talking about the Greeks from 3,000 years later. I don't think that we are never accurate to talk about those shit,
No, but I think it's
Even
interesting to
people that
reflect
study
on
that,
it. Yeah.
Like I just what if it's all metaphorical? Oh no, and then we just try to come out. Oh, they used to tell this to people because then people would. You don't know what people used to think at that time.
That's an interesting point, and yeah, you're right. Like, it could have all just been metaphorical. They didn't actually believe that stuff was happening. Yeah. I never really thought about it like that, because they're primitive. I know this thing's missing a wheel.
New chair.
I mean, you think about like a quote unquote primitive culture, even though a lot of ancient cultures were ahead of us in many ways. You think that they, in those fundamental things, viewed them as that, because I guess we look back on it like that. But I mean, like, there are not, there's evidence, you go back, like, there's still cultures that are fully removed from our, civilized, whatever, quote unquote, society, where they have like magic and witch doctors, but like, we think of those things as like mystical, but they were just doing science. They're just like
way.
Not in their own way, in the same way we do. They're fucking crushing herbs up together, and like, they made ibuprofen and it was a pain reliever, right? Like, they made it out of the shit that we make it out of. We have like great machines that can make it into fancy little pills and whatnot,
and sell for a fortune.
But they called it magic, or whatever they wanted to call it, witch doctor, or voodoo, or whatever. But like, it was all, it was just science.
Yeah, it's like fever. When people were feverish in like
Europe.
In Europe, like 1,500 years
the
ago.
plague or whatever.
Yeah, they would say that they were possessed by spirit, but they were hallucinating because they were with fever. So they would call like the priest to try to take the spirit off, and like
they just had a really bad fever.
Yeah, and they just had a really bad fever. And I mean, like today we just cure that with aspirins.
Yeah.
But we're so. Sorry about that, whoever's listening. We're so fucked up in the head that we still have people that try to take off spirits. From what? So.
Yes, I certainly see. Well, I'm not a scientist, and that risk of sounding very stupid here.
No, that's the point. We shouldn't feel that risk of sounding stupid.
Okay, so I'm gonna say
there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay,
We should sound stupid.
I think that there's definitely a correlation between.
Speaking of stupid.
Falling off your chair. I definitely think there's a correlation between how mindful people are of the environment and others around them, and how religious they are. One thing that I'm close to possibly moving back to Mexico, and because I'm excited, but at the same time I'm wary of some things. There's some things that I don't really like, and many times I feel like many Mexicans only look out for themselves and don't really think of what or who is around them or the greater good. It's totally valid, when you have very few resources to achieve something. It's probably much easier to think of the immediate return rather than the long-term return of your actions, right? I've been educating myself a little more about Canadian First Nations people and just in general people who aren't very religious, and how people who aren't necessarily attached to a predefined or like one of the mainstream religions are a lot more mindful of people around them. And religion, so what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that basically religion doesn't make us better people. I think it makes us worse people because of how rigid some of the rules and way of thinking could be.
Well, I think that that's a pretty blanket statement. I mean, coming from somebody who's pretty adamantly atheist.
Well, yeah.
Like,
you said I didn't have to feel stupid
I know.
in this conversation.
I know, that doesn't mean that. But the point about that
Okay.
is we're gonna, just like if I said something stupid about feminism, you would, within your right, fucking whip me to it. Okay, so, no, like I'm just, it's all about the discussion. So, I totally forgot what we were talking about because it threw me off track.
Blanket statement.
Yeah, the blanket statement about religion. Like, I think that it can bring a lot of good. Like, I mean, so many, like, churches and stuff give back to their communities, and there is, like, especially in places where there's poverty and things, there is hope that's built around it. I think it's debatable whether or not that's good. I used to get into really, like, pretty intense arguments with my ex-girlfriend about it. Not arguments, discussions. They were good discussions.
And that's why.
But because she spent, yeah, well, no, it's not.
It's an ex-girlfriend.
No, it's not. Well, she spent a lot of time in like places like Ecuador and Peru, and because I was so like atheist, and I'd be like, I don't get why people can't just like they just are ignorant of facts, you know? And she'd be like, well, it creates a lot of hope in these places where, you know, it's kind of all they have. It is like the hope and the community that, you know, God is with them, and that He will protect their family from whatever may come, because nobody else is, you know, they're having a tough enough time doing it themselves. And so I get that, and I think that okay, maybe not necessarily important, but I think that people who need spiritualism should be I'm all for it, you know? You need spiritualism to get through your life. You need to believe in God. I'm not saying like, then do it, you know? Like, again, as long as you are within the realm of what we know, then I'm happy to let you have your kind of opinion on anything. Like,
sorry, what do you mean by that?
Like, okay, so
what we know.
So what we
What
know,
does that mean?
what we know about like our surroundings and our universe. You have to adjust your knowledge and maybe even your spiritualism to new information that gets presented to you. Like, okay, we know that the Earth is round. You have to accept that as a fact. If you don't accept that as a fact, I don't know what to talk to you about anymore. You know, like, you could be the smartest person about anything else, but how can you not accept the fact that the Earth is round? Or we are however many million miles away from the sun. The universe is this many million years old. Like, these things we know, or this many billion, 14 billion or whatever years old, these things we know from science. Now, anything outside of that is fair game. Like, even if the idea is that, well, even if it's a fact, and this is totally, even if it's a fact that we're in like in a bubble, in some dude's bubble bath or something, and that is our universe, and it's only been in existence in his universe for half a second, but it's been 14 billion years for us. That is what we know about our universe, and so you're
okay.
Like, I will sooner prescribe to that idea about the dude in the bubble bath than the idea that a deity created this specific planet.
Maybe, let me break it down. like maybe what you're trying to say is maybe you see religion. The word religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to reconnect. Well, to reconnect with what you were born with, or what you already have. That's the meaning of the word religion in its roots. I think there's having said that, I think there's a big difference between reconnect or religion and brainwashing, because a lot of these so-called religions for me is just brainwash.
Yeah.
You know, and in a point that they have to make you believe in whatever I believe, or whatever Paulina believes, because otherwise it wouldn't work.
That's definitely, I was getting there, was like, you need to adjust it to within what we know to be true. And so you can't believe the Earth is 2,000 years old anymore, because it's not. Like, you have to adjust that. And if you can't, then what are you? You can still believe in God, just not that the Earth is 2,000 years old. Anyways. And also that you can't shove it in other people's faces, including and especially your children. Like, I'm sorry, but you have to let your children decide something like that for themselves. Like, you can't instill potential falsehoods in people just to make them feel
they're falsehoods.
That's the thing.
And in a way, isn't science our own kind of religion?
It is, but the fact is that when something new comes into it, it changes.
Right.
It changes. New, like gravity waves, just discovered. Okay, those things exist. Now everybody has to now adjust their findings or whatever around the fact that there are waves of gravity floating through our universe. Whatever that means, like, it's way above my fucking head. But that is a fact now. And that was something that wasn't true a couple years ago, you know? And it changes things for a lot of people. Like, it doesn't change things for me personally, because I don't really understand it to the level that it could change my opinion on anything. But
yeah, you see, if we drop this pen, if I drop it, if we just like let it go, it's gonna fall.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to believe that. That's a fact.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Indeed.
Accurate.
Quite.
Oh man, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but
It's so hard not being a scientist.
yeah, fuck scientists. Well, next time we're going to invite a scientist as well. But what I'm saying is that you don't have to believe in gravity in order for this to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
You cannot even be aware there's something called gravity for this to happen.
Yeah.
And you guys figure out how this attached to the religion talk.
Yeah. So relating back to the thought of the afterlife. So if we each believe in what we believe, does that mean that our experience regarding death is different, or do we all experience the same thing?
Well, I think yeah, that's a good question. I just think we're going to experience the same thing. I mean, you know what? You cannot believe in pain, but you probably felt some pain in your life. Probably not the exact same way that I did or Matt did, but it's pain. We all know the feeling of pain, or most of us, if we don't have problems, but right? We all know how pain feels, but we would never know. Thank you, Matt. That's not for me.
No.
I'm riding my bike in 1 hour.
1 hour?
Yeah, I had to ride.
Oh, well, I thought you had to leave earlier, so that's awesome.
No, I had to leave early.
No, I thought you had to leave earlier than 1 hour. That's why I'm excited that you get to stay.
No, I can't. I had to leave like
In an hour.
I know. I thought you had to leave.
No, I have
early.
to leave in like 20 minutes.
Oh, I thought you just said you had to leave in an hour.
I had to cycle in an hour, so I had to be downtown.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Alright.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So finish up. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, this won't add it though. Anyway, so like you were saying, I thought it was interesting that you said that maybe the way people experience death will be different, right? Probably will. You're probably going to experience death different than you, but it's going to be death for all of us. We probably experience pain different than.
Yeah. Well, we have different thresholds for pain.
But we all do experience pain.
Yeah. Well.
Or,
Yeah.
Well,
Guess so,
let's say
yeah.
pain because happiness is more of a different concept. But
That's true.
yeah, or pleasure, whatever.
Yeah, no, I would agree. But to kind of Paulina's point, we have different thresholds for pain. So, what might hurt me doesn't necessarily hurt Paulina or vice versa. Or and even that extends to our how it affects us psychologically, right? Like, some people are terrified of needles, to the point that they will have a fit if somebody comes close to them with a needle.
Yeah.
And that, so if somebody actually ended up giving them a needle, maybe it would hurt them a lot more than it hurts me, who I look away, they put the needle in, I honestly barely even feel needles most of the time they go in. And so, is that just because my brain can dissociate and go well, it's not a big deal, this thing is just piercing my skin and it's only going to hurt for a second, and so it honestly doesn't hurt because I don't know, I cannot.
Nerve
We're
endings.
probably gonna
Science. More science.
we're probably gonna get closer and closer as the neuroscientists develop.
Mhm.
They're developing really interesting stuff, like how our brains are wired.
Yeah.
And stuff. But that's all recent. Anyway, I'm probably gonna have to go.
You're gonna check out?
Yeah,
Paulina, do you want to stick around for more?
I think I have to check out as well.
Okay.
I've got some feelings
Okay.
to do.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Paulina, writer, producer, film critic, and a lovely woman.
Thank you so much for being here.
Aw.
I was talking about feminism after that, and enlightening us with your presence.
Yes, thank you for joining the Slackline for our inaugural episode.
Thank you guys for sticking around and for calling me. I very much enjoyed this, and I hope that even if it's probably just my mom.
Maybe even
Our
more.
moms, yeah.
Yeah.
Still, thanks for listening, for having me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we thank any of the Slackline listeners, which are probably very few, but maybe that'll grow.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
This is how